Hey, what's up, gang? I'm gonna take a quick break from Numemon, even though it is my favorite deck to play right now. There are still other really interesting, I think really fun, and just kind of okay decks to play in the format as well. Aside from obvious tier 1 contenders like Leviamon, Lugamon, Red Hybrid, and stuff, I think there are some really interesting decks out there that aren't being explored as much, unfortunately. And one of those I'd like to talk about actually is the Dark Masters deck. Or as I've tested and changed the deck list, it's kind of just become a Mega Zoo deck. But I think it has a really competent Mega Zoo engine that works really well. And I think can see some solid play. There's a lot of customizability when it comes to the kind of top end that you would like to use. But I think overall, the best way to play this deck is with some Dark Masters and a fuck ton of aces. In fact, a insane amount of aces. And as the game goes forward and stuff, stronger and stronger aces will be released, and this deck will be able to benefit from them more and more, to a point where actually in BT17, some insane aces have been released that are absolutely game winning by themselves, and you are in a very strong position using this deck to make use of those impossibly strong cards. But enough with the yapping. We're going to go over the deck list, and then we will go ahead and go over the idea of plays and kind of what the goal of the deck is. So starting off, we're playing 4 Mother D Reaper. I'll explain a little bit more why we play this card, but realistically, it's just discard fodder. You will hatch your first or second the first turn and maybe on the third turn, depending on what your hand looks like. So these are just cards that are meant to be destroyed by you to get value off of them. They don't provide any other utility, but there's no other digi-egg that you'd really want, because a lot of times you actually want your breeding area clear. Following up next, we've got 2 Cherrymon. Okay, we're only playing 2 Cherrymon. I think it's a good card. It's inheritable as one of the weaker ones. Piercing's okay. It lets you still get checks through with your obscenely big megas and supers, but I think it's just all right. The color plays pretty nicely, especially with some of our best aces, but overall, I think that purple and black right now is where the ideal coloration comes from, so we'll be playing more so of those. We'll go ahead and put this guy to the side for a second, because he's, I think, the spiciest option. So on top of the Cherrymon, we're also playing 4 Gigadra. This one's my favorite. I think this is the black is the best color in this deck by quite a large margin. It also gives Reboot, which is impactful for certain aces or certain cards in your deck, giving them blocker and whatnot. But realistically, Reboot doesn't come up too much. And even if you can Reboot to kind of stop yourself from being deleted, most of the time they're going to be trying to get over a 15k or 12k body, which isn't too hard for a lot of decks, but it can still be a little difficult. Especially since DP reduction is something that's like actually really prevalent in this meta, and so this Reboot inheritable can come up. And then the last of the Dark Master support, we're playing 4 Lady Debbie. We can kind of go over their effects now, since they all have the same effect. The only thing that's different is the inheritable, which this one has retaliation, which is also nice. Not super powerful a lot of times, but we have a lot of Digimon that she can go into that have blocker, so that's really powerful. In the sense that you can trade, and you can give them a lot of memory, but you'll also be taking a body off the field. So the level 5s here all have the same on play, which is you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and add 2 level 6 or higher cards and return the rest to the bottom of your deck. You have to add 2 if you can. So if you're running low on resources, you can't kind of just like try and stall and just putting out bodies and stuff. You will have to add consistently. You don't typically go to deck out, but I've had a couple matches where I kind of cycle so much that I do end up pretty low. I think you'll probably see, depending on the amount of these like 5s that you find, about half your deck pretty consistently. Searching the top 4 and adding 2 is super strong. Even for 6 memory, you're getting a nice little body out, and it's pretty consistent. At end of turn, they all have the same effect, which is by leaving one of your Digimon, you may play one Digimon card with the Dark Master's trait from your hand to an empty space in your breeding area without paying the cost. Now, this comes up on your first turn a lot, but I would still recommend hatching the Deep Reaper, just because the body itself is really important to kind of keep up. It threatens aces constantly, and they can be checks depending on the kind of deck you're playing against, where you may just kind of want to swing quickly to kind of like put some pressure on. That's not typically what you want to do, but it is an option that you have. And we're playing 4 of the purple and 4 of the black, because again, the purple and the black are the best colors. Speaking of purple and black, we are playing 4 of Wisemon. Wisemon is on play when digivolving. Reveal the top 3 cards of your deck and add 1 purple or black Digimon card from among them to your hand, then place the rest of them bottom or top of the deck in any order. So top or bottom is really nice because you may be able to find like a key piece that you really want to get to your hand, but you can't add it because it's not purple or black. So this includes like any of the Omnimons that you can't add, which is fine. He's the only card that searches for your level 5s in your deck, which is pretty big. Really nice. He's purple and black, which gives him the ability to devolve onto, I think, almost every single ace in your deck, if not every single ace in your deck, which is super impactful right now. And he has the strongest inheritable, which is blocker. Giving your big aces that don't inherently come with blocker feels really strong, especially if your opponent swings in for a check and you digivolve on top of an ace that gives you value, and then you can block with that ace immediately. It feels really good. This card is super strong, super solid. The only downside is it searches weaker than your level 5s, and it can't delete your D-Reapers to do stuff. But this is typically, in my opinion, like your strongest turn 1 level 5. But that is just my opinion. Going forward, next up, we're playing 4 Piedmon. Piedmon is purple. Again, purple and black are the best colors in this deck with the way that I've built it. There are like certain other top ends that you can do, as well as like the meta progresses and as we get more cards. I actually think that maybe like blue and green for your Dark Masters start adding a lot of value to your deck just because of the level 7 aces that are coming out. But Piedmon has the on play / when attacking, you delete one of your opponent's unsuspended Digimon. Pretty solid. It's a really good effect. Typically, you will have the Piedmon here in raising, so you'll push out, you'll swing, you'll get the pop on whatever they have, and then you'll do the check, which feels really good. But even then, sometimes you'll be able to like hard play it out, either for the 11 cost, which doesn't feel that great, but you're already giving your opponent a lot of memory, so sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures, or using the Dark Master's effect, you can play out the Piedmon and then get 2 of its effects to proc, which feels really good sometimes. But yeah, on play when attacking, it deletes the unsuspended Digimon, and then your turn, this Digimon can only digivolve into white Digimon. So it specifies your turn is when it can do this. So technically, it can digivolve into other Digimon colors on your opponent's turn, which specify like aces being pretty strong. Being able to do that feels really good. But typically, you'll be digivolving this into a white Digimon on your turn, just trying to get like a lot of value going forward. And then end of your opponent's turn, you have to delete this Digimon, as all the other Dark Masters do. These last 2 effects are on every single Dark Master, but end of your opponent's turn, delete this Digimon, then you may play 1 Digimon card with Dark Masters in its trait other than Piedmon from your hand without paying the cost. So notably, these level 5s over here, the Dark Masters ones, don't actually have the Dark Master in their trait, so you can't play out a free level 5 to start searching for more and stuff like that. The only things that you can go into are the other 4 level 6 Digimon, being the Machinedramon, the Piedmon, well, not the Piedmon for this guy, but for the others, you could go into the Piedmon and then just off themselves for their own effect, the Puppetmon, and the Metal Seadra. Though, you will soon find that only other Dark Master that we're playing, ignore this Puppetmon, he's just a proxy for something else because I didn't want to print out a card, for Machinedramon. Machinedramon, I think, is the strongest on play and when attacking effect. It's a Digivolve 2, which interacts really strongly with, I think, a lot of decks that kind of want to build up a big stack, that have like removal protection, stuff like that. So this feels really strong and really good. And it has the same other effects as the other Dark Masters. Notably, actually, that should be brought up. The purple Piedmon and the black Machinedramon have the same inheritables as their predecessors in the line. But this is all we're playing in the Dark Master engine. We were playing more. We're playing 2 Puppet and 2 Metal. But Metal Siegedramon is the worst by far. It's balancing a level 5. And that feels kind of weak. It feels kind of bad. I don't really like it that much. It feels like there's not much that you can really do with it. And then the Puppetmon also feels kind of middling. Just purely because of the fact that it only bounces bounces suspended Digimon, and it actually it bottom decks them. It doesn't bounce them, but it bottom decks suspended Digimon. So both are really easy to play around, especially if you're telegraphing that they're coming out by having them in the breeding area. Your opponent can just not suspend, and then that forces you to not promote, and that brings up like a weird value train where eventually your opponent will swing, but they'll be getting more and more value because you will be consistently probably like putting them to like 6 memory every turn. There are a couple turns we'll be putting them to less depending on what the amount that they give you. Anywhere from like 1 to 6 is like the average though, which I know doesn't seem, it's like, oh, 1 to 6, that's such a wide range. But again, like your opponent you'll typically put them to 6 turn 1, and then they will put you to like 2 or 1, and then you'll put them to like 5 or 4, and that's like kind of like the game that we'll be playing back and forth pretty consistently. There are a couple ways to try and choke your opponent, but they're few and far between. So yeah, this is it that we're playing for the Machinedramon, Dark Masters, Piedmon line. You can argue for upping the numbers of maybe your Puppet or your Metal C just to kind of get out those level 6s really quickly, but because they're because they're blue and green, they actually don't get the benefits that the black and purple Digimon do in this deck. So you can't search them with your other level 5, the Wisemon, as well as most of the Omnimons in this deck can't Digivolve on top of them, so it feels pretty middling. There's not too many great white Digimon that you can Digivolve on top of them on your turn, and there's no like good level 7 aces that you can Digivolve on top of them yet. The Imperialdramon Paladin mode that comes out in BT17 is super strong. It's the ace effect of when Digivolving, remove the sources from all of your opponent's Digimon. And then it does something else, right? You put all the cards in either you or your opponent's trash to the bottom of the deck, and then if a level 7 white Digimon was placed into the bottom of the deck, gain 3 memory, which is a wonderful way to try and steal turn as well, while stripping all of their sources, and then when attacking, bottom deck one of your opponent's Digimon with no sources. It's insane. It's an insanely good card. In fact, it's something that you'll definitely play 4 of in this deck. And so there are arguments to be playing the Metal and Puppet, but we're just not there yet. So there's no argument in my opinion to be playing them other than consistency with your level 5s. Next, I was running 3 Mega Gargos. This is the best card in the deck by far. Mega Gargomon Ace is disgusting. If you ever Digivolve into it on your turn, you're consistently stopping your opponent, which feels really good. But typically, acing into it is game winning. It's game breaking, and it feels disgusting. So it really does force, this deck forces your opponent to delete your level 5s before going into anything pretty consistent. There are a couple decks that do meet that criteria. Like Lugamon can do it pretty well. War Greymon can kind of do it by swinging into you, but if you Digivolve on top of the purple, give something retaliation, then it doesn't feel as great. But decks that have a hard time kind of just removing bodies on field as quickly as you will be putting them out will kind of struggle a little bit against your ace cards. I think the worst part about this deck is how telegraphed your aces are, because you can add this from any of your level 5s, and so any color that matches there, your opponent will just know, and so they'll be like, fuck, I can't swing. So a lot of times they won't be kind of swinging into you in that way, but I mean, it's still an insane card, and I would suggest running 4 of it. For those of you that don't know, it's a ace card, so it does the counter evolution. I won't go too in detail for that. I feel like you should just know at this point, but it has blocker and a reboot just on it by itself, so you won't be getting too much from either of your black level 5s, but from your green one, the Cherrymon, you will get piercing, which is really good, and getting the retail is also really good, especially on a blocker Digimon. It has when digivolving, you can suspend 2 of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers. Then 2 of the Digimon or Tamers can't unsuspend or digivolve until the end of their turn. Super impactful, super strong. It can come up, you can get more value from it doing it on your turn, but even doing it on your opponent's turn feels disgusting if they haven't gotten value off their Tamers yet, which they typically will by the time they're swinging again. But the biggest one is they can't digivolve anymore. In my opinion, feels super strong and super oppressive. And also being able to unsuspend, it's like a mini quartz in that way for 2 specific targets. So it feels really good. Really good, in fact. That's why I'm bumping it up from 3 to 4. I think that just seeing that in your hand will change the direction that most games are going. Following up next, we're playing 1 War Greymon Ace. This is just like another blocker by itself. I think it's nice to just have a blocker. Plus, it does the same swinging thing. Oh, right. I forgot. This card just has so many more effects. Sorry. Out the way, trash. All right. Mega Gargantuan Ace also has when digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon. So even if your level 5 is suspended, it will unsuspend, and then you can immediately block with it, which feels really good. It also has end of attack unsuspend. So this thing will be checking for twice, which feels really good. Checking two checks is really strong. This guy does something very similar. When a security is checked, unsuspend this Digimon. It doesn't have reboot, but if you digivolve on top of your Mega Gargo, not your Gigadramon, I mean, it will have the reboot, so you'll be able to swing, and then start your opponent's turn, unsuspend, block, they check a security, unsuspend, and then block again, which feels pretty good. I'm only playing it at 1, just because it is purely black, which I like the dual color aces a lot more, and I feel like its effect isn't super impactful. It's only really good if your opponent's swinging with a 11k or less, because then at least you can trade, or if you're going to die and this is like your last ditch chance to like win the game, to like survive. But it does add pressure. It is a 2 checks a turn pressure giver, so that feels okay. Next, we're playing 2 of the Metal Garurumon Aces. This one is purely because we will have a lot of excess like bulk in our hand that sometimes we don't really need. So being able to pitch 3 cards is something that you can do pretty consistently. So, you know, you set your opponent to like an amount, they swing into you, stealing 3 memory, even if it doesn't steal turn, will at least like make them have to change up the play that they had in mind. And it's consistent removal. It's when attacking, you can pitch a card to trash, to delete one of your opponent's Digimon to the lowest level. You'll be digivolving this to either give it blocker, so with the Wisemon, making it like a worse War Greymon for defense, or it'll have a Retail, which is nice, not super useful. Very rarely will your opponent kind of just swing into it, they'll remove it in other ways in this current meta, but that's okay. Again, stealing the 3 memory and the consistent removal is are the main reasons that you do it. It's only mono purple, but I think it's still a little bit better than War Greymon Ace, so that's why we have it. And finally, I think the last 2 aces that we actually have here are the Ebenwumon Ace. Ebenwumon is it's a green-purple card, so it's pretty good in that sense. I love the dual colors. They let you, I think green, black, green, purple is the ideal coloration for this deck. We'll get into that a little bit, but mainly it's just for like the Omnimon stuff. But on play, or when digivolving, so this is the only ace that actually has the on play. So typically you'll be, this is the one that you feel most comfortable, just hard playing, but you can hard play any of these level 6 aces and not feel too bad about it, at least. The War Greymon is just a 6 cost blocker for 11. The Metal Garurumon is just a purple body that we can get out for 6. Typically you won't be playing that one, but I mean, it is what it is. And then the Mega Gargo is a 7 cost, but it also, it will just then fulfill the role of the War Greymon in that scenario as well, where it's just a blocker. But this is the one that you actually feel pretty good playing for 7 sometimes. So its effect is on play when digivolving for each of your Digimon with the Deva or Foreign Sovereign trait, which will just be 1, typically. Very rarely will you have both. Ebenwumon's out. I've tried out like a Zulongmon, and I've looked at the others as well, but I haven't been too happy with them. The level 6 aces specifically. But if you want to try adding more of them, you can get more off of these effects. I just don't really like most of the Deva aces for this deck in particular. But yeah, for each of those cards with those traits in them, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. Then during your opponent's next unsuspend phase, all of their Digimon can't unsuspend. That effect reads crazier than I think it is. A lot of decks in the current meta can either just like plop out more bodies and give them rush, or unsuspend their Digimons themselves. So giving them the stopping their unsuspend phase for that single Digimon doesn't feel too strong. But the reason that I think that effect is better than I initially gave it credit for is because you can then use this card on your turn, by either playing it or Digivolving for 4, and that will then give you the ability to stop them from unsuspending their entire board, which feels really, really good. You can use it on their turn as well, but if they know that the effect is there, sometimes I've had a lot of opponents just kind of not swing out, which is totally fine. It slows them down a little bit, but this feels a lot more impactful because then you can actually start removing their suspended bodies on the field that they may not have wanted to get rid of by building up a board and then them not being able to unsuspend on their turn and then using that board that you then built up to swing into them to kind of start doing removal. I think the on-playing when Digivolving is an okay effect, though. I don't think it's like anything crazy. Not as good as Mega Gargomon, but it has a second effect, which is the on-deletion. Delete one of your opponent's suspended Digimon. So the ideal is actually Digivolving this on top of Wisemon, suspending one of the things, and then blocking with the Ebon Woomon, because the Wisemon will give it blocker, and then deleting another one of their suspended Digimon, either the one that you just suspended or the one that just attacked. Yes, you'll overflow 4, but honestly, in this deck, because you're giving your opponent so much memory so consistently, you're more so attacking their cards as resources. You're trying to make really strong trades, either like really strong 1-for-1 trades or really strong like 2-for-1 trades pretty consistently. And as long as you end your turn with like a body on field, you're always threatening like any of these aces almost. The only ones that don't threaten all of the aces are the Gigadra and the Devi and the Cherry. Obviously, like those 3 don't threaten everything. Wisemon threatens, I think, literally everything. I think Gigadra and Wisemon are probably the 2 best ones. The other 2 are completely okay though. Following up next, we are playing for Omnimon Zwart Defeat. This is a 3-cost Evo on top of any of your purple or black Digimon, which will be all of them. You can Digivolve this guy on top of every single one of your level 6s, and it feels very, very powerful to delete one of your opponent's tamers, as well as setting your opponent to a lower amount. So a lot of times you will get the value, you will kind of promote your Dark Masters, or just depending on if you got aced in the prior turn, swing out with that Digimon, and then Digivolve into the Zwart Defeat, ideally deleting a Tamer. But even if you can't delete a Tamer, it's still nice putting your opponent to 3. Or setting them to like a lower memory amount, because it makes it really hard to deal with your board of level 7s and level 6s. A very common play that I'll do is either have like a Machine Dramon or a Piedmon in the back, and then I will promote it, swing into security, Digivolve into the Zwart Defeat, and then end of turn use one of my Dark Masters level 5s to delete the Zwart Defeat to play out a new Dark Master from my hand to raising, and then the Zwart Defeat effect will delete one of their Digimon. So you'll be able to get the deletion, a check into their security, especially if you can keep memory before passing turn with a 3. So if you like, say you're at 3 memory, you go to 0 with the Zwart, you swing in after Digivolve on top of your Dark Masters, and then you delete a Tamer if they had one, and get the check in for 13k. It probably won't die. Even if it dies, you'll still get the on deletion effect, which feels fine. And if it doesn't, you can guarantee the on deletion effect with one of your Dark Master level 5s. So it feels very, very strong to kind of interact with the board in that way. It makes you feel a lot more proactive, which was something that I felt hampered the deck a lot when I was playing a lot more Dark Master centric stuff and less Ace centric stuff, purely because it felt I had to react to everything that my opponent was doing. And sometimes if my opponent just tried to OTK me, they could do it pretty consistently by guaranteeing their Digimon with jamming, or by guaranteeing the Digimon by just being above 15k consistently. The next, and I think last 4 of in this deck, will be another Omnimon, unsurprisingly. It is Omnimon Zwart Defeat, or just Omnimon Zwart, period, no defeat involved. No losing here. So this one, again, digivolves on black or purple. So it digivolves on every single one of your aces and every single one of your current Dark Masters. So it feels really, really good. When digivolving, you will trash the top 3 cards of your deck, which is completely fine. It had a bit more utility for getting like certain cards in the trash quicker when I was running the Apocalypse, but it didn't feel pretty good. The reason that it feels still fine to trash 3 in this deck is because you want to see your black and purple level 5s in the trash, because his second part of that effect is you can play cost 8 or less black or purple Digimon cards from your trash without paying the costs. So this is like the ideal play, obviously, is you go Dark Masters or one of your aces into a Zort, and then Zort defeat, trash 3, and then you play out a Gigadra, a Lady Devi, or a Wise, depending on what you really need in the situation. Like, do you just want more search? And if you want just a lot more search, then you go for sure into the Dark Master level 5s. And if you need like a consistent blocker set up in the back, then the Wisemon is better. But the ideal is having 2 of them. You play both of them out, and then you either search the top 8 cards and add 4, or you search the top 7 cards and add 3. But they all feel really, really strong, really, really solid. And then when attacking, it is a removal, which bounces back the level 6 underneath this card, which will in turn, if it's an ace, give your opponent memory overflow. But if you're deleting their body of 12 cost or less, that's okay. You don't feel too bad about it. Or if it's Dark Masters, it lets you kind of start swinging more Dark Master like tempo back into your deck if you don't have any more in hand, which still feels really good. Like getting an extra Machine Dramon in hand to then immediately place in raising, like deleting the Omnimon Zort because it's no longer useful to you after swinging out with nothing underneath it, just deleting it with a level 5 and then placing the Machine Dramon you just added back to hand, or the Piedmon you just added back to hand feels really good. Or even just getting an ace back to hand, even with the memory overflow, will still sometimes feel good, especially with the 2 new purple black bodies on field. Because then you'll be able to digivolve into said ace either on your turn again, or if your opponent swings into you. Following up next, we have 1 Omnimon Alter B. This is the only level Omnimon in your deck. There's a couple level 7s you can't digivolve on top of, but this is the only level 7 Omnimon in your deck that you can't digivolve using your Dark Masters. You can using your other level 6s, but ideally you'll just digivolve for 2 on top of one of your prior Omnimons. And so you'll have 2 level 6s underneath, so you won't get the trashing effect from the Zort when attacking, but you will get the digivolve 3, and then you will be able to delete some of the lowest play cost, which feels really, really strong and really, really impressive. We're only playing 1. There's an argument for maybe more than 1, but I don't feel like it's super needed at the moment. I think it's too inconsistent in the way that we can use it. I've actually considered cutting this card for maybe more Dark Masters or another copy of like an ace or 2. But whenever it comes up, it always feels really good. So playing it at 1 feels fine. Just note as well, I think that you can change a lot about this deck list. You could even take it in a completely different direction, maybe focusing more on like the blue-green side of things. But there's not too many good aces on that side yet. And even when more aces come out, they all have like a black or purple leaning. So it still feels like, oh, we can kind of get things going really well there. And next up, we're playing 2 Merciful modes. You will almost never digivolve on top of any of your level 6s using this card. You can, like the Mega Gargomon or the Ebonwu, but typically you won't. It's just good removal. It's great. A lot of decks in this format really hate not getting their on deletions, so being able to bottom deck their on deletions quicker than they can actually activate them because it all happens in the same effect feels really good. It trashes security, which feels fine. It digivolves for 3 on top of an Omnimon, which means that if you do keep turn, you can actually go Omnimon into Alter B for 2. And then if you do keep turn, you can immediately get the effect, but if you don't keep turn and it you just kind of hope it lives. And if it does live, then you will get the trash 2, which feels disgusting. And to be fair, you did just clear out digivolve 3 for one of your opponents, and that feels fine. And that still feels like that feels pretty good. That's pretty good. I think that's the last of the Omnimons. Next up, we're playing 1 Quartzmon. You can digivolve it on top of most of your aces, but none of your Dark Masters. I think Quartzmon is just really good when you're going against wide decks, and again, all of these level 6s or higher are searchable, by a majority of your level 5s. I think this is the mono white omnis and the quartzes aren't searchable by the Wisemon, but they're searchable by all of the other Dark Master stuff. So playing like 1 or 2 copies of like a quartz feels pretty good. Specifically against like wide decks that try to kind of just like rush you down and they don't care about aces and they just kind of go whatever, we're just gonna swing through like all your powerful cards. I've had a digi-police player kind of do like a 10 body field and just swing through the aces. I aced twice and even that wasn't enough to save me, including a blocker from the Mega Gargo. But I think the quartz is very, very good. Following up next, we're playing 2 Death X. Again, searchable. Searchable, cheap body to play when you kind of want to play it. You can digivolve into it on top of your Ebon Wu and like your Mega Gargo, or actually you can digivolve on top of any of the aces again, which is funny enough because again, purple, black. But you typically won't be wanting to do that. You'll only really be wanting to do that in the sense of like playing it for the cheap and cost. But yeah, no, it's Death X. You know, it does what Death X does. And then up next, we've got 3 Digimon Emperor. I want more of the next tamer right here, but they just haven't come in yet. So I've been trying out the Digimon Emperor, seeing how it feels. It feels pretty good actually against a good portion of the meta, and because you have so much strong removal in your deck, you can pretty consistently remove, if not all, a majority of your opponent's field every turn. So you will be getting the draw 1 super consistently, especially because of the amount of digivolve that we run. It's super common that we will digivolve your opponent 2 or 3 times and then delete their Digimon itself, getting rid of like a lot of their floating effects, and then getting the draw 1 off the Digimon Emperor. He's a cheap body to play out, so that way you can pass turn without, you know, breaking the bank, which feels really good later on in the game, where memory management actually becomes one of the more prominent things you have to worry about in this deck. And he can kind of choke 2 memory. Because even if you're past your opponent to 6, you know, on their turn 1, they will have to do the rookie stuff, and they'll eventually like put you to 2 or 1. And depending on what they have out, be it like they have a rookie in the back and they just played like a bunch of option cards and stuff, you can put them to 1 with the Digimon Emperor, and then they can't promote that Digimon without passing turn immediately. And then that rookie in the back will be super vulnerable to like anything that you do. You'll be able to then kill it, or if they do keep in the back, they're only at 1 memory. Even with these super powerful like training and memory boost option cards, they won't be able to actually make use of them as well as they could have. They'll have to kind of, you know, pop a memory boost, then play a rookie to then, you know, digivolve for free using a training to kind of do some stuff there. So it does feel good, but the main problem I have with it is that because you are putting your opponent at so much memory, if they do consider, especially on their first turn, like a Digimon Emperor punish, if they pass you back to like 2 or 1, you will be they'll just digivolve into like their 4 in the back for 2 memory, and they'll still have 4 memory to work with level 4 in the back instead. So that's like digivolve again into like for like 3 to 2 memory into like an ultimate if they don't care about when digivolving, or just, you know, playing out a tamer for 4, like a memory setter, which feels really good, or even just like playing out like 2 tamers and then something else, or some combination of things that your opponent can really play around a lot more consistently. And then our last 2 tamers that we definitely want to be playing more of, Takamiya and Matt Ishida. Start your turn. If your opponent has a level 6 or higher Digimon in play, gain 2 memory. That effect comes up almost every game, I think, against almost every deck. Very few decks will not proc that effect, especially with the exorbitant amount of memory that we'll be giving them in the early turns. They'll be able to kind of ramp out into their level 6 super quick. Most decks probably won't OTK you, but there are a couple that can. But most of the OTK decks are actually more card reliant than they are memory reliant. So the memory more so just lets them cheat out their searchers a lot quicker, which will then in turn get them to their combo quicker. Whereas the memory itself won't usually lose you the game instantly. So getting to that level 6 is something your opponent will do a lot quicker than normal. So it'll be online a lot quicker than normal. And 2 memory is a huge amount of memory in this deck. Because if they put us to 1, we go to 3, and then us playing a level 5 only gets them to 3, or us evolving into a Zort only gets them to 3, or we can play out a Tamer or Digivolve for some amount of memory, kind of keeping turn or even like passing turn at a choke with like a Mega Gargo for 4 or something along those lines, which feels super good. And anything above 3 is just insane. Anything above 3 is disgusting in any meaningful capacity. And then your turn, your Digimon with Omnimon in their name have security attack +1. That is so strong. That is so strong. I've had games against certain decks where playing this out turn 1 was the correct play instead of actually getting a level 6 out. Or not level 6 out, I mean a level 5 out. And I've had games where just dropping this on turn 2 will win me the game as well. The amount of pressure that gives you, because of the amount of Omnimons you're playing in the deck and the fact that they can Digivolve on top of every single one of your 6s, it feels so very oppressive to do. Because those Omnimons are hard to get rid of. They all have either strong on-deletion effects, or they are ways to answer your opponent's field already. With them being so big, it's difficult for your opponent to deal with them. And so now the fact that they're checking for 2 every turn instead of just 1 is so strong. And if you get out multiple, checking for 3 every turn, it lets you turn into like a very aggressive deck going like turn 2 or turn 3. The idea of this deck is like you're ramping out a fuck ton of memory, and you're giving your opponent a fuck ton of memory. So when I say you're ramping out, I mean you're just saying, fuck it, a level 5 or 6, I don't care. I'm not getting the draw, but I'm getting the search. It's threatening by itself, or level 5, I mean. It's threatening by itself, or because I can go into like any of the Dark Master stuff, like in the following turns, or I can do any of the aces, and then just having the Taikamiya and stuff out, getting into an Omnimon super quickly, like a Zwart defeat, checking twice. It's even more likely to be deleted too than deleting your opponent's stuff. It just feels really good. I would probably play another copy, if not 2 more copies of this card, but these ones haven't come in yet, so I haven't been able to test too much. And off to the side here, we'll go ahead and go over some possible options. So like obviously increasing any number of like the aces and stuff are things that I've like considered to some extent, or changing up the aces like a Zulongmon, or like the red purple Deba. I can't remember the name of it, but I think that overall I'm happy with the amount of aces that I have currently, because I think the best one I have at 4, and the rest of them are more so utility that can provide me some stuff, but they're not as good as the Mega Gargo. Though next set there comes some really powerful aces in the Vikemon and in the Grand Kuwagamon. The Grand Discard, both of which being super strong aggro tools and being super strong defensive tools. And other stuff that we can look at is obviously increasing the sorry about that, increasing the amount of the searchers for the Dark Masters. This one has the best inheritable being blocker, but you have no way to really get it under anything consistently, which feels really bad. So like this one is typically just deletion fodder in this current version of the deck. And this one is okay, but it doesn't digivolve into as many aces as you'd like it to, especially the really valuable purple and black ones. The only ones that really give you that same value are the Ebenwu and the Mega Gargo, which is why we're still playing 2 of it. I just don't like it as much, especially since we've cut out a lot of Dark Masters. You can also increase the range of Dark Masters, some like increase of like Puppetmons and the Metal Seedramons. Metal Seedramon always felt really bad to have in hand, but the Puppetmon had some unexpected utility, especially against like certain decks. This card is like an auto win against like decks like Heavy Leo and stuff. It was super strong and impactful and game determinative in a lot of ways, which is really nice. And the Piercing comes up nominally as well, actually, especially when it comes to trying to clear your opponent's board. Being able to check and do things like that while also still being defensive in a lot of ways feels super strong and good. The problem is that you don't really have any great cards that synergize with them in the same way that the other ones do, because you are limited to only white, and you're also limited in the way that you cannot get into your stronger Omnimons like Zwart, which play out the extra bodies. And then obviously, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Apocalypse. Well, you're not playing that many that many Dark Masters, so you won't get it too cheap, which is like the argument of increasing it. But also, what do you want to place underneath it? Like, you can place an ace card, but all of your aces don't really do anything on play. The only one that does is the Ebb and Woo, and you're only playing 2 of those. But even placing an ace underneath it, I mean, you're milling then typically, like, if you have the full stack, you're milling 8 cards, which is good. I mean, that's like cool, but you Ebb and Woo, you stop your opponent from doing something, or you do one of your Dark Masters, you pop a unsuspended, you bounce a level 5 or lower, you bottom deck a suspended, or you digi-evolve 2. It's kind of just a dude at that point. Yeah, you have your stronger inheritables with retaliation and blocker and reboot, which feel good, but the only matchup that this card actually comes up in is like SecCon, and even against SecCon, they can just get rid of it with like a Chaos Degrade. And if you do have any of the aces underneath it, they'll gain more memory off of getting rid of it, which feels bad. You can use it for like a searcher and stuff by putting one of your level 5s underneath it. But if you put a level 5 underneath it, you don't mill anything extra. So the way that I was typically using it was just to search more. When I was like, well, I want to pass turn as cheaply as I possibly can, so like for 3, and then also search more cards so that way I can get more shit going on the next turn, which felt fine. It's just you're not playing any strong level 6 on plays in this deck right now. It doesn't come up that you want to use those Dark Masters so badly that you're like, oh, the Pokemon does something. And against most decks, milling 8 one time isn't enough to actually disrupt their game plan. And milling, 8 again, maybe 10 the next turn, 18 cards, like, yeah, that's super disruptive, but this isn't a strong body. It's just 15k. They could answer an Omnimon. I feel like your Omnimons just give you more value. This guy doesn't. He doesn't do much, unfortunately, which sucks because he looks sick. I like him a lot. I want to use him. I just don't think that with the current way that the game plan of the deck works out, you just don't get enough value off of him currently. So instead of like a Pokemon Turbo, you're kind of just sitting there with a Pokemon in hand a lot of games, not really making use of him, which feels really bad. So he's been cut from the deck. But you can play him and up the amount of Dark Masters, and you can still see some marginal success. I just think that this version of the deck is better than that. So anyways, going over the ideal like turn 1 play, it's obvious in a sense of what you kind of want to do. It's one of the level 5s. You're going to mulligan for one of these guys minimum every game. If you don't have one, you're mulliganing that hand almost 100%. There are a couple games where you can argue against it, especially determinative against the matchup, where you can just play like an Ebb and Woo, a Mega Gargo, and then go into like an Omnimon from there and try to get like value from there. But most of the time, you're mulliganing for a minimum of 1. You feel a lot more comfortable with 2. The one that you feel kind of okay with only 1 is the Wisemon, because he can then search for another level 5 in the following turn, which doesn't feel awful. But yeah, the ideal turn 1 is one of your level 5s to search out your top 4 or top 3, adding 2 or 1 in respective, and hatching out a Mother D Reaper. You will not use the on deletion effect or the end of turn effect to delete on your first turn because you hatched, obviously, and because you actually really valued these bodies more than you valued the Dark Masters themselves typically. Of course, again, not always. Depending on your opening hand, maybe you do actually value the Dark Master more than the body on field, so you'll delete the body instead of hatch and not hatch, so that way you can then play the Dark Master in raising immediately. But that's a very niche scenario that doesn't come up that often. This is just the general turn 1 play. And then next turn, you'll then promote Mother D Reaper, and then you can either devolve into one of your aces on top of the level 5, or play out another one of your level 5s. That's the ideal next thing to do. Playing out another level 5 will put your opponent probably anywhere between like 5 to 3 typically, because they'll put you 1 to 3 on average as well, which feels fine. Again, like your opponent will get just like these huge stipends of memory super early on, and your benefit is that you're now set up fully to make use of strong aces, as well as you searched a lot, so you'll probably have them in hand, and you'll be getting typically a free level 6 by now deleting the Mother D Reaper at end of turn to then place one of your Digimon in raising. And then depending on how your opponent acts, they have to delete these level 5s, which can some be difficult for some decks, or very easy for other decks, unfortunately, and trying to make use there. But I guess like combo OTKs, which is actually the decks that we tend to suffer against the most, the amount of memory doesn't actually matter too much. It, again, just lets them search quicker, whereas the other decks that we tend to not really struggle against The memory does matter, but only in the sense that they will then make like a level 6 very quickly and try to beat over you. Any ace in hand will then kind of resolve those issues very, very quickly. And then following up on the turn 3, you will then promote the Dark Master. Let me see if I can grab one of those guys real quick. One of those fucking bozo boys. Probably like here. Yeah. So you'll promote the Dark Master, and you'll typically get the swing in with it. It usually won't die. If it does, I mean, that's fine, but typically it won't. And assuming it doesn't, or maybe if you want to play it a little bit safer, you don't swing with the guy, and you instead just digivolve directly into an Omnimon. And if you have a Zwart in hand, you can make the argument like, oh, then I want to swing in with these guys to definitely check if they die. And if they do die, then you can use the Zwart for 6 to digivolve on top of the Machine Dramon, immediately playing out the Lady Devi and the Wisemon again, and then you can make the decision of like, do I want to delete one of these guys to kind of get a Dark Master in the back again, or I can delete this guy who's now a Zwart without getting the effect of the swing to kind of get him back. You will then search the top 7, you know, the whole shebang, and that's kind of like the loop. You'll still be playing level 5s for their main cost, but past the initial first turn, it doesn't really feel that bad anymore, and you're just going to be consistently doing that over and over and over again, really banking on your super strong aces and insanely strong Omnimon plays to kind of close out the game from there. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple. I think the main thing that you get to kind of watch in this deck is actually resource management. And understanding what cards are valuable in the current matchup. This deck requires you to know a lot of what your opponent does and what they kind of want you to, how they want you to interact with them, so that way you can deal with their cards in a way that's actually meaningful. So against like heavy loader and stuff, deleting them doesn't feel great. They usually won't get the on deletion effects though to digivolve, since we don't really care too much about the digivolving without an ace on field. And even if they digivolve an Omni back into an ace, our ace cards are still pretty good. Most of them will have some effect that will make them strong, or even going back into an Omnimon feels completely fine. But against decks like Luga, typically, like a way that they can answer us is by just playing out, like, especially if we do this like turn level 6 here. As previously mentioned, yeah, we play out this guy for 6 on our first turn. I've had a lot of the Luga players just hatch Rookie and then maybe use like a training or something, or not even bother and just hell Luga me for 7 and then pitch their cards to then gain like the draw and stuff, and just cycle and get my bodies off field very quickly, which feels awful, feels bad. And against them as well, like Fenrir, if you give them enough memory to go into Fenrir, the turns they're looking to go into Fenrir before swinging. So if they go into a Fenrir for like 4 and it puts you to, you know, you're like 2 or 1 without having to swing into you, it feels really bad, because then you won't be able to proc your aces typically, especially if you only have one body on board. They'll be able to play around that very, very easily. Other deck like matchups and stuff, I think we typically lose to some aggression. I think it depends on your style. If you're trying to kill in a single turn, I think that you're really suited well to deal with this deck, as long as you have some way to survive huge bombs and security. I'm talking like 15k, 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 15k checks, which are super, super common and super easy to actually see, as well as getting value off of like heavy graveyard disruption and heavy like field disruption. So like if you don't play Tamers, that's a boon for you against this deck. If you don't care much about your graveyard, that's another boon. If you have ways to consistently pop your their level 5s, or even dealing with their aces pretty consistently, that's another huge boon. I think that popping level 5s consistently is an insanely strong mechanic against this deck, because our aces are, again, the best way to actually play, in my opinion. So we're just going to go ahead and do a quick pros and cons for this deck. I think pros, there are certain matchups that just feel unlosable. And especially using your hand, depending on what your hand is, it feels like you can deal with almost anything your opponent sends your way. And the amount of value you get feels super, super strong. And there's also just something cathartic about just hard playing a level 5 or hard playing a level 6 and saying, I really don't care. I really don't care that I gave you 10 memory for the turn. do your worst, and it probably won't be enough to deal with my responses. And even if it is, then I mean, c'est la vie. The cons, as previously mentioned, biggest con is any deck that can consistently delete your level 5 bodies is super problematic. Any deck that tries to OTK you with a body that's protected in any way feels super strong as well. Those two combined are almost impossible for us to deal with. I feel like Lugamon is one of the hardest matchups in the game for us currently. But then again, there are like some auto-win matchups as well. Like Leviamon is an auto-win matchup as long as they aren't playing the Octomon, which I know that a lot of people have cut. The Octomon that places the token on your field, because they will never be able to make you play Digimon by effect because you don't play any level 4 or lowers. So that feels really good. We play a lot of cards that hate on Numemon. We actually have a decent matchup against Numemon from my personal testing experiences, where it feels really good to kind of just like, your Numemon typically will try to go wide very quickly, which you have a lot of ways to punish, and especially with like a searchable Death X, Quartzmon, things like that. Aces, you know, they have a hard time getting rid of like a 12k body, an 11k body. They have a little bit easier time, you know, getting rid of like a 6k body, obviously. But by the time they're getting to like that 6k body and deleting it, hopefully you've gotten like enough value out of it. They have some tamers, which you can pop, which also feels good. Other like notable matchups, Devas. I haven't lost a game. Not a set, a single game I have not lost to Devas. You have a lot of graveyard hate, which Fangalon really hates. The matchup, I think my opponents that I played against have just kind of been a little bit unlucky or just not known how the matchup works in a lot of ways. You're essentially having like an ace off, but your attacking effects will hurt them more than their ways of removing your level 5s. It's like Piedmon will just delete level 5, and it's like, okay, nice ace anyways, but they have a lot harder time deleting your level 5s in time to actually get the benefit of it. And Fanglong will be bottom decking typically like 4 cards every time to just try and get rid of your super huge bodies, which also feels completely okay. The worst thing about the matchup is that you have no answer to a Fanglong, so they're just going to be getting in for the swings. Your only answer is a 15k body in security, which again is very common. Getting that 15k body, or even like trading in with a 15k body if your opponent leaves their Fanglong rested, which feels good. It feels great. It feels great that you can just beat over. Well, not even beat over, just beat into him. You both die. You'll usually get like the benefit of either some on deletions, or you'll get the benefit of having cards back in trash to play out with Notice Wart. Whereas them losing a Fanglong is like devastating. It feels really bad. Especially in the same deck, their Digimon costs 1 more than you. So if you let them go first, they'll put you to 7, and then you'll be able to play out 2 level 5s in the same turn, which is disgusting, by the way. It feels so unfair that I got 2 level 5 searching effects, putting them to 5, and they only got 1 level 5 and then level 5 in the back. It's so rude to do to your opponent, because yours are just 1 memory cheaper. It's so funny. Though if you do go first and you put them to 6, they'll just put you back to 1, and that doesn't feel great. That doesn't feel great either. I think in that matchup, I usually prefer going second. I especially really enjoy the draw. And you're not typically trying to kill them that quickly either, because, you know, again, you want less cards in their trash for Fanglong. But overall, I think that's... Oh, one more con, actually, that I found out literally last night while I was testing the deck, is Gatsumon and the Pillowmon and the green birds and like the stack that stop you from playing by effects, stops you from playing your Dark Bastards in Raising, because the effect happens outside of breeding. So even though it plays into breeding, where cards can't affect, the effect itself is outside, which will then still be affected by your opponent's floodgates. So that's something that you should keep in mind. The level 3 bodies aren't too hard to get rid of, but they're also hard to get rid of at the same time. They're not too hard to get rid of if you are set up. In fact, they're pretty easy to get rid of if you're set up. But if your opponent is dropping a Pillowmon on turn 3 in response to your 6 memory and then doing some other stuff, and then passing you like 1 or 2, well, the only way that you can get rid of it really is praying? Question mark. You can't like you'll promote this guy, you can't play a Dark Master in the back, which is Piedmon would be like your typical way to get rid of it consistently. So we got the Digivolve into like an Ace here, or into a Dark Masters. Digivolving into a Dark Master sucks ass because it'll get deleted on your opponent's end turn, which means that if you're not keeping turn after the Digivolution, it does fucking nothing. And then if the Pillamon is still up, obviously it won't be able to delete itself and then play something else. It'll just delete itself and do nothing, which feels fucking awful. But yeah, so that's just something that you should keep in mind for sure, either if you want to beat this deck or not. But yeah, those are the pros and cons. I think the deck is super, super fun, and it definitely gets better going forward. I think right now it's in a okay spot. I think it's definitely like tier 2, if I'm being generous. But going forward, I think it is a contender in tier 2. Maybe even pushing tier 1, depending on how strong certain aces get. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I wish you all the best. Please leave a like, subscribe, and comment what you think. Maybe I'm missing out on some cards that I don't even fucking know about. So thank you, and have a good one, everybody.